Welcome to the Pirate Broadcast, where we interview interesting people doing interesting things, where you can expand your connections, your community. Kindness is cool and smiles are free. And let's get this party started. Welcome aboard. Hey, everyone. Love that you're here. If you're here live, if you're here locally, if you're here in the future, gratitude for you joining us on the Pirate Broadcast. Today we have Josh. Josh Tapp is a pirate. He's been on before, and we're going to catch up with Josh and find out what he's focused on, what he's excited about today. Josh, how you doing?
It is so good to be here. I'm glad. It's going to be fun. We're doing great. It's a little early for me, as we were saying. I usually don't do calls this early, so
it's early for me too. So
still rubbing the sleep from my eyes a little bit here, but I'm excited to be here.
You know, it's a great day to understand and appreciate what we can add value to for the community. And I think before we were going live, we were talking about adding value and saying, here's something that people are asking for. Here's something that people are really excited about. They want to know more. And maybe you can expand on that for the individuals that may not know you or haven't met you before, Josh. Kind of talk about what your focus is and how you help and add value to the community here.
Yeah, and I love that question. Honestly, that's kind of been on my mind a lot more, especially the last few weeks even, is what's the value that we actually provide to people? How are we really giving them something that they can take and go get wins? Mm-hmm. And in my case, I work with entrepreneurs, right? So how can I help an entrepreneur go get a real win quickly for free, so that they learn to trust me and to know that I'm here to actually help them? And I think what happens with most people is when we talk about value, there's two things that their brain does. The first thing is, okay, how can I turn this into a funnel so I make money? And I know I can say this because this is from personal experience. It's, how can I give somebody a free value so they can steal their email and get some money out of the deal, right? And then the second thing is they're always asking, like, well, what value do I actually provide? Yeah. And the question that's been so interesting for me or the way that I've been answering that has really just come down to, what do you want people to trust about you? How do you want them to trust you? And everybody thinks that requires, oh, well, I need to be featured on all of these big news channels and Forbes and Inc. and all these other, big places that, yes, there are credibility boosters, but I need certifications. I need all these other things just so that people can trust me. And I've been fortunate enough to hit certain levels of success just by being a good person and trying to get people to trust me for me and know that I genuinely care about their success. And, I was 21 when I started in this business. So people are like, well, what experience do you have?
A year ago, right?
Right, exactly. And for those of you who might be saying, okay, well, I've got some sort of, I don't know if handicap's the right word, but like some sort of thing that's keeping me from success because, oh, maybe I'm ugly, or maybe I'm not confident, or maybe I have these things, and I'm just throwing things out there. But if you feel that way, it's rarely the case. What you really need people to understand is that you are there to help them solve that problem, no matter what the cost to you. And I know for me, that the way that I was able to provide that value for people was to say, okay, you know what? Nobody knows me. I'm 21 years old. I have no reputation online or offline. I'm just a kid. So I started a podcast because I said, hey, I could interview people and ask them the questions that 21-year-olds, entrepreneurs, were wanting to know about business. And I could ask these highly successful people, and then I could kind of piggyback their success. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Curiosity, and that folds into another question that I've always thought about is, how can I be curious about what other people are doing and ask questions about how they got to where they are, or how do they think about where they are going? Because that gives a lot of understanding about what a person is driven by, what motivates individuals, what propels them forward. So I guess, starting off in 21, podcasting, which is, really starting to heat up now. And I think we're only in the beginning stages. And I think we have a lot of growth here. So as a result of podcasting, what did it teach you about just communication in general? And how has that driven your results today?
That's a deep question. This is why I like coming here, Russ. You've got awesome questions. First off, and I kind of have to break the question apart a little bit, because the first thing is, people, when you're talking to somebody, like in a podcast, for instance, when you're interviewing somebody, you need to be curious. You can create curiosity. I'll be completely honest with you. I have very, very little interest in like energy healing and those sort of things. But I have interviewed very successful people in those industries and had amazing conversations because I got curious about it. I didn't have to do a bunch of research or have to adopt their ideas or anything, but I was like, what would I really want to know if I wanted to step into their shoes and be as successful as they are in the energy healing space? And that allowed me to kind of put myself in their shoes and say, okay, if I wanted to be where they are, what would I need to know? And that's just putting that in perspective of our podcast, where we interview entrepreneurs. But, if you're interviewing people about them being athletes, or about actors and actresses, or about what have you, whatever topic, it's really about putting yourself in their shoes and saying, okay, how do I get to know who they are and how they got to be where they are? And I stick, and this is going to sound like a really boring answer, but I always stick to the who, what, when, where, why, how, right? Those are the big questions. If you can't ask those, or if you have no other questions, those are the questions you revert to, right?
Absolutely.
So who do you recommend in the space of energy healing, right? How did you become an energy healer? How did your, what's the biggest thing that you've learned from being an energy healer, right? So you can ask each of those questions. And even though they might be quote unquote boring, what happens if you're listening to the answer, they're going to say something that's going to spark more curiosity and kind of help you get to that answer. So does that answer your question, Russ? I feel like that.
Yeah. Well, the second part of that question, and Tracy, sorry, Tracy, for asking compound questions. It's like I have a tendency to ask multiple questions in one scoop.
I'm the same way.
She reminds me. She goes, "Okay, Russ." Well, I won't say what she says to me, but and awesome producer, by the way. Thank you so much, Tracy. I love you. And the reality is that we learn something, and the reason I want to bring this up is because we identify something that works. We test it out. We find out, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and the journey is never a straight line. However, during that learning experience, the failure, it's just experience, right? It's, we don't fail until we quit. So once you learned about podcasting and learned about marketing, and you learned a little bit about what people are asking for, you ask about curiosity, that teaches us what we're doing next. So, you've indicated that you're doing something next, you're putting your energy into a certain focus. What was the lesson that you learned that allowed you to move forward in this direction?
See, the beautiful question again, Russ. I'm just going to say it every time you ask a question. So one of the things that I learned pretty early on from a mentor of mine was get curious, figure out what their problems are that aren't being solved, and then solve it for them. And at 21, I had the leeway. I had the time to say, okay, well, I'm going to learn the industry. I'm going to find it out. Right. And for me, that's actually kind of been a winding road, right? Finding, okay, people really need Facebook ads right now. So I built a Facebook ads agency, realized I hate that world, did not want to do that anymore. But at the same time, all of these clients I was working with were saying, hey, you know what? We really could use more networking opportunities, masterminds. So I got into masterminds for years. Mm-hmm. We still do masterminds.
I still love
but recently in the past, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, in fact, I have a mastermind coming up.
Yeah. So attend Russ's mastermind, just so you know. It's going to be awesome. He's not going to plug it, so I'm going to, because he never asks. So make sure you go check him out. So the other thing is that in the past year, what's been happening for us is I've really been trying to focus on how do we create a scalable business that doesn't 100% rely on me? And what's the big problem that my audience is screaming for that I'm not providing for them?
Yeah.
And our mastermind that we've been running for years is teaching people how to monetize a podcast, how to take that podcast, make a lot of money with it. And then, we kind of leave them out to dry is what it felt like. They're like, okay, well, now what? And the number one question I was getting was, Josh, I don't have time. We're working with successful entrepreneurs who are saying, I don't have time to sit here and constantly be producing content, editing my own show and distributing the content on social media. So the people who came to me were just saying, can I pay you or can I pay somebody else to do this? And we realized we were pushing, literally, no exaggeration, millions of dollars to social media agencies, to podcast editing agencies, and all these different places. So because I had somebody send me a check and they were giving me a 10% commission for referrals, and it was in the 6-figure range. And I was like, what? We've pushed you that much business? And so we decided to say, okay,
let's stop the leak.
Yeah, let's stop the leak. We're pushing that much business out. And I figured they were getting some, but they'd never been sending me anything. But at the end of the year is when they distribute their checks. And so when I got that check, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a multi-million-dollar opportunity here. Because I've only been sending, a percentage of people over. And what we decided to do is say, okay, we already have an editing team. We already have a social media team. How do I task them to do the work for these other people? And that's where the podcast multiplier company has come into play. So we started to edit and produce people's shows. And really we're working with people who are saying, Josh, I want to have content. I want to be a thought leader, but I literally work 80 hours a week already. And I don't have time to be constantly producing content. So what we do is we say, can you dedicate 1 hour a month? Or have you already dedicated 1 hour a month in the past that we can repurpose that content into an entire month of content? And just doing that alone has helped. We've helped dozens of people at this point actually start, launch, and then scale out these podcasts and these content strategies to get anywhere from 10 to 50,000 eyeballs per show. And that's really kind of what we shoot for as an agency, is how do we get people to see the visual content, listen to the audio content, and read the written content. So that's us kind of in a nutshell on how we've been solving people's big problems.
Well, and that's, as you know, we've had several conversations around this, and the idea of the Pirate Syndicate is to, generate a massive amount of content in a very short period of time. Like this episode here will be broadcast out to, at least 20 locations immediately, and then a transcription, a podcast, all the post, all of this stuff, and then the follow on, the audiograms, things like that can all be created as a result of this episode. So right. I just want to applaud you on their effort, because that is an area, and I think it's going to be an expansion in the podcasting world. And I actually want to give a shout out to Nina Perez, because she and I are both part of Winjack Studios, which is supporting podcasters in a lot of different ways. And it's a community of podcasters supporting podcasters. So I'm sure there's an intersection there, Josh, where we can actually maybe have conversation. I
completely agree. It's funny, Russ, this is where I love this, is that we haven't, what people don't think is, oh, well, how come you're interviewing a competitor? But we serve two different audiences. We serve two different types of people. We have different ways that we do it. They might end up hiring both of us, right? You never really know. And I have no problem saying, go to the Pirate Syndicate. I mean, these guys know what they're doing when it comes to producing content.
Well, the pie is always big enough. It's not competition, it's co-opetition. It's how can we work together to increase and improve the industry? That's the way I look at it right now. It's so new, it's so up and coming, that it's really important for us to understand how can we improve the industry and share these elements that we all have to learn through experience. I want to say hi to B. Lee Jones. It looks like good day from the other side of the world there. Marcia, Pirate Nation rocks. Thank you so much, Marcia. Love you.
We agree.
Elise from South Africa. Thank you so much. Got an international audience here today, Josh. So I want to move into this idea that we have an opportunity. Everybody has a gift. Everybody has a mission. Everybody has a purpose. And, sometimes we are fortunate enough and lucky enough to find that purpose. And I love live streaming. I love podcasting. I love the media content creation process. And this has been really easy for me to accomplish. And I see it growing. What's your vision and plan for the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question. So there's a couple of things that you should be looking out for right now if you want to be in the content game. And the number one, and I actually want to reference John Lee Dumas's new book, if you guys haven't heard of this. He's not paying me to promote this by any means, but I've been reading his book.
You didn't get the JV?
What was that? I
You didn't
do
get the
have
JV
it, but I'm not
Twitter?
going to give you the link. So this book is brilliant. But anyways, it's called The Common Path to Uncommon Success. And he's talking a lot in there about how to develop really great content. And he talks about his journey of being the first to market when it came to doing a daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. But what's interesting is fast forward. So he started in 2012. We started in like 2015, I think. Even from 2012 to 2015, we were behind being interviewing entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And what's happened now, even now that we're in 2021 at the time of this recording, we've gone from when John started, probably, I think it was 10 to 20,000 podcasts. We just passed 2.5 million podcasts in the world. Because of coronavirus, it doubled. Everybody's realizing, oh, this is a bandwagon I need to hop on. So what has to happen at this point is you have to seek differentiation. And it can't be, I care more, right? If that's what you come down to is, oh, I care more about my guests or my audience, that's a given. You should do that. But that doesn't mean you've created a differentiating factor. So it's finding what's a content strategy, what's something that nobody else is doing that could be intriguing enough to bring people into my world. So the first thing that I would tell you is go look at the OGs. Go look at the people who've been in radio. I mean, Russ, when you were in radio, right? That's where you started, was in radio? Yeah. So go look at Russ and say, okay, how is Russ doing it that's different, right? Russ is live streaming every single day. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think this is episode probably 446 or 447 or something like that.
Yeah. 447 days straight. I mean, this guy knows how to produce good content, right? Doing a daily show. That's his differentiator, because the barriers to entry or the barriers to doing what he does seem really, really high to most people. So they're not going to approach what he's doing, because live streaming is a lot more nerve-wracking than just recording a podcast episode, because you can't really edit out your live stream, right? No. So that's the first thing, right?
It's actually live.
Exactly. Yeah. So the thing is seeking some sort of content differentiation. The second thing is to be looking at what's your platform that you want to stick to. Now, I do recommend podcasting, because even though we've doubled the amount of podcasts out there, mm-hmm. if you look at the listenership for podcasts, it's almost entirely in North America. There's some in Europe and there's some in Australia. We haven't even touched two of the biggest countries in the world yet. We haven't touched India and we haven't touched China yet with these. And these are English speaking countries. Most of them speak and consume content in English. Mm-hmm. So what most people who are kind of the leading people in the sector right now are actually targeting these Chinese and Indian markets and with their podcasts. And if you want to really get ahead of the game, just see what somebody else was doing in the radio space years ago, right? Mm-hmm. This is bad. I'm going to date myself because I'm so young, but I don't really know a lot of radio people. Like Glenn Beck is the only one who comes to mind. And I know he's like, some people hate him. Some
Howard
people love him. Yeah. Never really listened to any of them. But anyways, go look at
listen to radio.
I'm not a big radio fan. I'll be completely honest. My wife still listens to the radio, like music on the radio, and I don't. But anyways, I'm a podcast guy through and through. But you want to be looking at what they've been doing for years and say, how can we incorporate that into the podcasting space? I know one thing so I'm a big fan of Jimmy Fallon's show. If any of you are familiar with his show, I love it because he basically takes people who are idols and makes them seem human, kind of puts them in these awkward situations so that we can see them as human. And you're about to see this with the Lucky Titan podcast, is we're going to be transitioning our content to start doing that more, because everybody looks at these entrepreneurs, these billionaires, and say, man, they're just these high in the sky people. But having spent time with them and done masterminds with them, they're just as weird as you and I are, right?
Down to earth and crazy as the next person, right?
Right. You should watch them go out and fish. It's just hilarious how frustrated they get with fishing, right? But it's fun to bring people out and see them be human. So we're going to be doing kind of more of that take with our show. But look at those sort of things and say,
for those that aren't familiar with your show,
yeah, please do.
Plug it. Please plug it so people know where to find you. And so it's all in the notes as well. So
love it. So it's the Lucky Titan podcast, the Lucky Titan. I say that like an Idahoan, so I slur it. But that whole show came about because I was like, I want to interview entrepreneurial titans. And then people started calling me the Lucky Titan, which I thought was funny. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take it. But it's more about interviewing people and about how did you hit your successful break? But what we're getting down to is how did you build a cult following? And so we talk a lot about their marketing. So if they're in the space of masterminds, how did they build a mastermind with 400 or 500 people? If you're familiar with, oh my goodness, what is his name? Big A. I don't know the rest of his, I can't remember his name. That's his nickname, but he has one of the world's largest masterminds, like 600, 700 people.
Holy cow.
He's been doing it for like 20 years. His is kind of more what I would call a networking group, but anyways, interviewing people like him saying, how did you get 700 people to pay you? I think it's like $500 a month per person. How'd you get that many people to follow you? Or, bringing on somebody who's got a huge following on their podcast and saying, how do you get 1 million downloads per episode? Those are the sort of things that we all want to know. What are these big things that you did in order to attract people to you? What's the value, looping back in the conversation? What's the value you're providing them that makes them want to stick around and then eventually buy your products? So that's what we really target on our show, because that's what we're all interested in. So that's the Lucky Titan podcast. We're everywhere. Go find us. We really like to have our listeners on Google right now, because Google is going to be doing some amazing things.
Yes, I've heard rumors. So Wendy says, Pirate Nation rocks and the Admiral leads with kindness. Welcome to the posse. Thank you so much. And here's one of the things that I think you kind of talked around but haven't suggested immediately is it's about the community.
100%.
Build a community, and the Pirate Nation and the Pirate Broadcast, the Pirate Syndicate, there's a theme there, and the idea is going back to radio is the fact that when radio was the thing to do and you didn't have a license to broadcast, you were considered a pirate broadcaster. And so now we're living in the most amazing time in humanity where anybody can start a podcast. Anybody can provide audio streaming, Clubhouse, the Spotify just launched the thing, Twitter, all of these platforms launching an audio platform. The difference though, and I think, Josh, it's important for people to understand, is that not everybody stays with it. And I think consistency and, somebody that's been podcasting or in the industry since 2012, like John Lee Dumas and the OGs that are, like yourself, that have been doing it since 2015. I taught at Podcast Movement in 2015. I was teaching workshops in podcasting back then. I was live streaming baseball games and high school varsity sports and doing this directly to radio stations. And so all of these elements and all of this information has accumulated in, the Pirate Syndicate. So it's really important to, if you love it and you can stay with the game, that's one of the differentiators that are going to allow you to stand out and build a community around it too. So I think it's important for us to understand and share that information as well. So.
And I love that you mentioned that, because that is really kind of the crux of what it is. It's building a community, providing the real value. We watch so many people are trying to get these ridiculously huge numbers. Yeah. But I'm part of a mastermind with a bunch of the top podcasters, and all of them are saying it is like the day of millions of followers is done. You don't need that anymore. You only need 100, 200, 1,000 people who love what you do. And they're always watching. So you're always watching the broadcast every morning. You're up at 8 o'clock in my time, at least 8 o'clock in the morning, listening to these amazing broadcasts with Russ. You're seeing all of his content online. You're joining his mastermind. You're joining all his communities. He only needs a few hundred of those people to really have a very, very successful company. And he can serve those people on a much higher level. And eventually the millions will come. But we only have to focus on that 1,000 and just watch what happens. It's pretty amazing.
And it's building consistency into your process. Right. In fact, I was talking to a client yesterday, and I said, okay, real world scenario. How many clients do you actually want to manage in the course of a month? How many clients do you actually want to help in the course of a month? Because you don't need 1 million downloads to help the capacity that you have in your business. And so let's focus on getting your business to capacity before you start thinking about scaling.
Right.
And that's the model we need to think about and consider. So it's really important to
I
plant
completely
that
agree with
seed
that.
out there. Hey, and I want to just mention people to enter the pirate treasure. You got some pirate treasure coming here. You could type in hashtag Pirate Nation in the comments, and we got a few people in there now. But let's make sure that we have if you haven't signed up, you haven't logged in, and you haven't chatted Pirate Nation yet, do so. We'll give something away. We'll share something with you today. All right.
Let's do it.
And then Josh, so now you have an agency, you have help in place that can actually manage and maintain additional people in their podcast, because editing audio and all the production takes time.
It does.
Delegate that and allow the individual to really mature in their skill set as a podcaster. Do you see more interview shows or one-on-one or talking head? Is there a format that is coming to life in your experience?
Yes, absolutely. And I will tell that I'm just shouting this from the rooftops for everybody, because I think this is the ones that you're going to start seeing major success in. And I have to preface this by saying that you don't build an audience with a podcast. You maintain an audience with a podcast. People are constantly trying to use podcasts to attract a larger following and everything, but not that it doesn't happen, but your goal needs to be, okay, I have 10 listeners. How do I constantly provide them with amazing value? What do they need? And so I would tell you, the first thing is always just do what your audience asks for. That's what it is. Like, you're not to say you're at the beck and call of everybody on your show, but ask them what they need. What like within the context of what you want to do. If you like interviewing and you're not confident doing the solo cast or just talking to the screen, I recommend interviewing, because it takes you out of the spotlight. It makes it very, very easy.
Well, I like people like you.
Right. There we go. And I like to interview people because I run out of content ideas. I'll be completely honest. I get to the point where I'm like, man, I don't know what to produce. I have a guy that we actually just hired him in. I hired him in to do editing for our show, some of the shows, because we've been growing so fast. We needed another editor. He came in, and I just sat down with him. We had like a 4-hour conversation. It was supposed to be 5 minutes, ended up being 4 hours about content ideas. And he's just creative as all get out. So shout out to Shiloh. But one of the cool things that we've been talking about and seeing is the education piece, right? People are constantly going to podcasts, and everybody's doing the same thing. Like, you're going to look at my podcast, you're going to look at all these other ones and just saying, hey, let's talk about your business. The ones that are killing it right now are the ones who are treating it almost like an audio course. And they're coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to, for the next 50 weeks, so one time a week for the rest of the year, I'm going to teach you how to launch a podcast. And week one, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about your idea. And then the next thing is we're going to talk about your audience, and so on and so forth, right? And those sort of programs are very, very helpful. I see that kind of being that next generation of content, because it's huge value. It's absolutely massive value. And then what you'll see is that people will go through your podcast, and then they will, if you have a service with it, they will pay you to speed that up for them. So you're like, hey, over the next year, I'm going to be dripping out content that's going to help you accomplish this task. So build a Facebook group or start a podcast or what have you, right? Yeah. But 90% of the time, people are going to go through and listen. They're going to start feeling like, I really wish I could just pay somebody to do this. That's where you present your offer, your service. That's what I think is going to be the number one next big chunk of content we see.
Well, I've always believed that podcasting was an opportunity to start a conversation with somebody that you might be wanting to do business with.
Right.
It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow. And when somebody needs your business, if you're showing up every day, if you're showing up and adding value, like where we started this conversation, if you're continuing to add value, you will eventually, you build authority, you build visibility, and those conversations will land business always. So
yeah, I completely agree.
I love it.
That's actually one of our number one lead generation sources is who we interview. So I completely agree with that. When I do have something,
there is a connection. There is a connection. I'm just not imagining this thing, huh?
He's like, how do I make money off this deal, right? I do have something for your audience that I think everybody will like. It's not a give me your email, I'm going to give you content. It's actually an article that I wrote. And I have to kind of preface this because I started writing this article about a year ago. And it was 7 ways to monetize a podcast. And then I'm like, okay, but is this like truly the best ways to monetize a show? So over the last year, I've interviewed 500 people outside of my podcast, asking them, how would you monetize your show? How are you monetizing your show? So I've talked to some of the top podcasters in the world and asked them this question. And it's not what you think. That's what's really fun is it's not always sponsorship. Some of the best people in the world, the most amount of money they're making.
I don't think sponsorship is the most productive way to.
I personally think it's the least productive way. That's my own opinion because you're like pigeonholing yourself. But I'm not going to rant on that. But so this article that I was writing, right? I was expecting it to be like 1,000, 2,000 words. It's like an 8,000 word textbook, basically. It's a step-by-step system for monetizing in 7 different ways. So if you want to check it out, so it's joshtapp.com/monetize.
It's right here in the bottom, right below.
Russ has got it right there. Go check it out. Let's see if I can get my finger on it.
Just like production.
Yeah, love it. So it's definitely a place to start for a lot of you who are saying, hey, I am a podcaster or I want to be a podcaster. It's a great place to go and just get some ideas. Look at what you're doing with monetizing. And I said I wasn't going to rant about it, but I am. Every time somebody who walks up to me and says, the first question they have for me as a podcaster is, okay, how do I make money with this?
Yeah.
Or when do I get my first sponsor? You want to know how many sponsors I've had on my show over the past, 6 years now? Zero. None. And the reason why is because it take all this time and effort to get one person to pay me a couple $1,000s a month, or I could keep it clean and push people to my products and make tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. So look at it that way and say, how can I leverage what I have to communicate with my audience and gain a personal relationship with them and solve their needs and get paid for it? That's really what I have people think about.
Well, let's connect you with a pirate today and make sure that you have an opportunity to follow up with them and share some pirate treasures.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run the rally here and we'll get a drawing.
Oh, this is fun. This is new from the last time I came on here.
Yeah. Woohoo! Who's it going to be today? Marsha Reese.
Marsha.
Now you have to meet Marsha. Marsha is an awesome individual that she is the inventor of sidewalk chalk. Oh. And she actually does the Stay Well copper. She does. Nice. If you got this, I don't know if you can see it or not.
Pirate
Syndicate copper.
Wait, she invented like real sidewalk chalk?
Yeah, the sidewalk chalk. She has a great story. She'd be awesome to have on your show. So
interesting.
Incredible.
Well, Mark, we're going to talk. You've intrigued me.
So I'll introduce you, Josh, on the back end. And I just really want to thank you so much for being here today. I know that we could talk for several hours on podcasting, broadcasting, content creation, all these kinds of things. So you're always welcome as a pirate to come back and let's stay engaged and open up the opportunities, everyone, to share a little bit about what you're doing in your world and how you show up. And because, well, you know, kindness is cool. Smiles are free. Josh, I want you to enjoy your day, man.
Yes, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening. We're excited to see you all.
Take care, everyone. See you later. Thank you for joining the Pirate Broadcast. If you found this content valuable, please like, comment, and share it across your social media channels. I would love the opportunity to help others grow in their business. The Pirate Syndicate is a platform where you show up, we produce the show. It's that easy. If you want to be seen, be heard, and be talked about, join the Pirate Syndicate.